Okay, just began the Mishnah yesterday, Daf Lamed. Hamal v'Moses HaKohen. Person lends money to a Kohen, there's a Levi, there's only Lios Mafresh Alei Michelkon. Initially, it was lent with the intent, and he informs the Levi, the Kohen, or the poor man, that ultimately he's going to collect the debt from the Truma that ultimately he will tithe in the future, from the Meiser that he will give, which normally goes to the Levi, and the Meiser Oni, the 10% which you give to the Oni, or the Lek Chichupeyo, you're going to actually take it, collect the debt from that. Because ultimately it's rightfully theirs, which is what we discussed yesterday a little bit. It's not only rightfully theirs, it's rightfully any other Kohen's and any other Levis and any other poor man. So how could you collect it from that? You're denying others. In the future, when you will tithe the Truma, the Meiser Oni, the presumption is you have a right to presume that they're still alive. So therefore you're taking the portion of that Kohen, that Levi. A Kohen or Levi or Hesher or Oni, or the poor man became wealthy, so he's no longer eligible for that, for the Meiser Oni. You go after Chazaka. That's interesting. We discussed, we've been just talking about this, we'll go Cheskes Chai. The Gemara says in Psochim that if you rent a home and before the 14th of Nisan, the chiv bedika, the obligation to search out the house, is on the renter, on the tenant. Because since when he took over the premises, it was no longer the owners, it was the tenants. The chiv bedika, the obligation to search the house, comes about on the 14th. On the 14th. What about if you took it over on the 14th? So the chiv bedika was on the owner, the landlord. So there's a presumption that the landlord did the bedika. Because there's a principle, no, hakol chaver meitzel bedika. Everybody's considered chaver. Chaver means he has a status that he's responsible when it comes to searching out. So the assumption is a chazaka that the premises were searched out, so the tenant does not have to search it out. So it doesn't have to search out the premises. Somewhere wants to know, what is it speaking about? If the landlord's in town, go ask him. You have to ask him. Did you search out the premises? The answer. And if he's not in town, we have a chazaka. We have a chazaka that the person who's an observant Jew, who's committed to the halacha, he did it correctly. So over there, the way it's explained, that if he's in town, you should go ask him, did you search it out? But we have a presumption. If he's an observant Jew, he probably did it. So the way it's explained, that the only time you rely on chazaka, Torah says if you have a situation where it's unclear and it's irresolvable, it's not verifiable, and the only way you could verify it is based on presumption, then you have a right to rely on presumption. But that's only same thing. Same thing. There are two things. There's presumed status and there's presumption. Presumed status you could actually verify. Did it change or did it not change? Then you should verify it. Presumption, did he check it? Did he search it? Did he not search it? If you could ask the man, so go ask him. Don't rely on presumption. So the Gemara says, Eino Be'ir, that the landlord he's not in town. So therefore you can't ask him. Therefore you have a right to rely on presumption. That since he's an observant Jew, presumably he searched out the premises. Okay? Well, what is it based upon? It's based upon, the psak of the reef is based upon that. The Gemara says that if you find an animal and you check the neck and it seems to be it was slaughtered properly, it wasn't just decapitated, the animal. The presumption is that the animal was slaughtered properly. Why? Because we say rov mitzvah it's a shchita mumchimei. The majority of people who do ritual slaughter, they're experts in shchita. Want to tell them to not learning there? Whoever it is, who is it? So tell them not to be there. Tell them to go look somewhere else. One second. One second. One second. So the Gemara says, the majority of people who do ritual slaughter, they're experts. I mean, they're proficient in halacha. Because even something looks like was slaughtered properly, there's certain things which invalidate the shechita. Let's say there's a nick on the knife. If the person hesitates while he's slaughtering, it's not a continuous movement back and forth. What about if he presses down on the knife when he's doing the shechita? These are all halacha mishmisinai. It's a nevela. It's not a valid shechita. So you have a right, since the majority of people who are involved in shechita are experts. Therefore, what about, so the Rif has a question, what about if the shochet is in town? The person who did the shechita, you're able to examine him, to see whether he is that expert. Maybe he's not part of the rov. So the Rif says, the Rif rules, you have to actually examine him to see whether he knows the halachas properly. Or if there's any question, does he even know how to do the act of shechita, he has to demonstrate that he could do it. But you have a rov. You have a rov. Well, why even? So let me ask you a question. Rabbi Kalatsky speaks about this. You have a mikveh. Mikveh has to have 40 so. Right? What happens if you find the mikveh it's less, short of 40? And somebody went to the mikveh and there's a question, when did it become deficient? So it's a mishnah in mikvos. Is the person Torah Tummy? The mikveh had a chazokah, but the person has a cheskes tumah, the whole story. So every time you go to the mikveh, do you have to measure the mikveh? You don't have to measure the mikveh, right? What are you relying on? Chazokah. Right? What do you mean? Every time you should have a stick there with notches on it, 40 sawed, you should insert it in the mikveh, but that's definitely not the halacha. Right? So why, when it comes to the shochet, yes, and it comes to the mikveh, there you don't have to measure the amount of water that's in the mikveh. So the answer is, a human being himself wasn't born knowing shechita. The animal, before it's ritually slaughtered, it's considered not kosher. So there you're going from one status to another. So your presumption is going to change the status of whatever it may be. The mikveh, I know factually the mikveh was 40 so. There's no reason to suspect that the mikveh is less than 40 so. See, there the house was not checked. It's mikveh. How do I know it's a mikveh? Because yesterday it was a mikveh. But maybe there's no reason to suspect it became. It's less than that. However, regarding the animal itself has a cheskes nezucha. It's not slaughtered. It was in a non-slaughtered state when it was alive. Did that state, did it change? Was there a transition from non-slaughtered to slaughtered? And the person who's doing the shechita wasn't born an expert, proficient. So was there a transition from not knowing to knowing? Because we don't know the background. This mikveh, we know factually. It was a kosher mikveh yesterday. And there's no reason to suspect it's less. Therefore, there's no reason. You don't have to go and verify that you still have the 40 saw in the mikveh. And the lung is still here? Lungs, no, it's kosher. Because it's not verifiable. Rov famous ksheros. The majority of animals are kosher animals. So there's no reason. There's no reason. We're not suspecting he forgot it. Let's say Shochet a year ago knew the laws. Do I suspect that maybe he forgot what he had known? Definitely not. Well, people forget. There's no reason. If there's no basis to suspect that he forgot, so therefore he has that presumed status that he's still an expert.
The mikveh is like a knife. If you checked the knife yesterday, he doesn't have to check it today.
It's only smart to check it, because if in fact you find a nick, you can have a problem. And since it's not unusual that you have this thing, a mikveh, it takes sometimes days for it to become less than 40. So it depends how many people use the mikveh, right? No. Water out. So the question: how much water initially was there? Was it double the amount originally needed? Okay, so on the circumstances, it depends what the reality is. But if I checked it 2 days ago, theoretically, you'd say, what am I relying on? Chazokah, so go check it. Because it's only chazokah. I'm saying where it's not verifiable, you rely. That's only where there's a question. What's happening? There's a reason to suspect, or there's a transition from one status to another status. So over here, the Kohen is in town, right? And there was an agreement that and he borrowed money, that when you're going to collect the debt, you can collect the truma. Do I have to go call him up, make sure he's alive? I have to make sure he's alive. The Brazil, he was alive, he's still alive. There's no efshel of rure because you can verify, therefore you have no right. The Mishnah says you rely on chazaka. Ain't a choshesh shemamis. I don't need, there's not even a reason to suspect, to be concerned maybe he died.
The same thing about, so Ani becomes wealthy, has the same status of someone who's dead, so it's wealthy.
Somebody who's alive, you don't suspect he died. Somebody who's poor, I don't suspect he became wealthy.
So if you know that he's wealthy, you lost your thing, you lost your...
No, he's still your debtor.
No, but
He has your debtor.
No, but you made the loan with Meiser.
No, you didn't make it from Meiser. No, you're going to collect from the Meiser.
I'm saying you're right, you collect from the Meiser that you owe the money, so he became rich.
Not you own the Ani owes you money. The Ani is the borrower.
Right, Ani's the borrower.
And you're going to collect from the Meiser Sheni
That you owe an Ani.
that you would normally
Yeah,
give to an
normally
Ashi.
Ani.
You would give to an Ani.
Right,
So you could collect it from there.
Rich.
So he has no claim to that Meiser any longer.
Right, so then you're out the
Let's say he actually did become rich.
yeah, exactly.
So you're out the money. That you agreed to do that. So what was one thing after another? You can't collect from
Exactly. So it's like,
no, you lend the money, the person lend it. If he has an inheritance,
Yeah.
you're going to collect from the inheritance. What happens if he doesn't get the inheritance? So you don't collect. Does he owe you the money? He owes you the money. So you're out the money. We had early, even Zoking, right? Unless he's a Goses. He's literally on his deathbed. We had early. Also, there's no reason, because that person continues to live. We said regarding a get. Or sick people don't die. It has to be enough. It has to be enough of a chashash. As I said, if it has to be enough of a reason to be concerned, then maybe something happened. Then you have to check. Then you would have to check. It has to be evaluated. It's not dislodging the chazaka. You're not dislodging the chazaka. You're not dislodging it. No, the Mishnah says explicitly, you send the get overseas, and the husband was chole. He was sick when he sent the get. You still could give the get. I'd have to be concerned. Maybe he died. Here we're talking about where you could verify it. Do I have to verify it? So maybe if he's sick, he's ill enough that he could, maybe something could happen, then you should go check to see if he's alive or not. By the mikveh, there's no reason to suspect it's less than 40 so. But you never know. There's no reason to suspect. Okay. We got the point across. I mentioned yesterday, towards the very end, the Gemara says in Zvachim, we had in the Kedushin, Balechaim nidochim, Balechaim ein nidochim. If you consecrate a korban, and you're not, after you consecrate, you're not able to bring the korban. Why aren't you able to bring it? Because the mizbeach became damaged, became chipped. The Gemara says that if you run your nail over the stone of the mizbeach, and your nail gets caught on that nick, the mizbeach is possible. That's how smooth the stone has to be of the mizbeach. The mizbeach became chipped to a point. There's no question it's damaged. You cannot bring a korban, and if you bring a korban, the korban's possible. It's not valid. So let's say it has nothing to do with fault or not fault. It's just a reality. Reality. So let's say they did the shechita and the blood is ready to be transferred and sprinkled, and you're not able. Everybody agrees it's possible. That's called dichui. Since there's been an interruption in the service is disqualified. What about if the animal's alive? You didn't even start the service. But the animal, if it's alive, normally, initially, you would be able to start the avoda. But you're not, because it's possible mizbeach. So the Gemara's question, Balechem nidochim, Balechem ein nidochim. Are they disqualified or not? Because even though the service hasn't started, but since you have the consecrated animal, do we disqualify all living animals? Shalom the Gemara. So Gemara has a question. This is where we left off. We're trying to finish it. Because it's dochui, because the korban cannot be brought. Just as if you're in the middle of the service, and you cannot continue the service, even if they repair it immediately, they immediately repair it, it's possible. Because since there was an interruption that you weren't able to continue, that's called dichoy. Dichoy means it's been pushed aside. It's been cast aside, and therefore it's invalidated.
And what would be the potential interruption if it hasn't been stored yet?
If you want to bring the carbon out, could you bring it? Not able to bring it. Since it's ready to go because it has kedusha, if you're not able to bring it, therefore, maybe even though the service hasn't yet begun, is that enough reason to disqualify it or not? Gemara has a shayla. So the Gemara has a case like this. Person goes and eats chaylev inadvertently. Person violates Shabbos inadvertently. So he's obligated to bring a chatos. Consecrates a chatos. And now he becomes a heretic, becomes an apostate. He eats chaylev. If he had chaylev, he will eat it. He will violate Shabbos. So the halacha is a heretic cannot bring a korban, cannot bring his chatos. What? No, he didn't violate. Didn't violate again. The chatos is for a previous inadvertent violation of Shabbos or chaylev. And he already consecrated the animal. He has a chatos. Chatos waiting to go. And then he becomes a mummer. Before he brings it. And then he does tshuva. After he became the mummer, and the animal's still there.
Tshuva's on the heresy, the tshuva's on the...
No, on the heresy. On the heresy. Well, he has to tshuva anyway on the sin. So now the chatos seemingly so that's the question, is it reinstated? Since it was consecrated, after he became the mummer, the chatos could not be brought, because the chatos of mummer is not valid, and now he does tshuva. The question is the chatos invalidated? That's the shayla. Okay. We need Howard here to answer that question. So Tosas asks a question. The Gemara says that if a person is in the middle of the avodah and he's transporting the blood, and the blood he drops the kli, the vessel with the blood, and there's a depression in the floor of the azora, of the sanctuary, and he's able to scoop up the blood and continue the avodah, even though time-wise he had to stop and scoop up the blood, regather the blood to sprinkle, it's not considered an interruption in the service, because it was biyodo. Since it was within his ability to continue without any hesitation, immediately to scoop up the blood and continue, so anything that's biyodo, that's not considered dichuy. So Tosas asks, it's biyodo lasos tshuva. When he became the apostate, it's within his ability to do tshuva. So what's the Gemara's question? When he becomes a mummer, why is it any different than the blood spilling out, and he's able to gather the blood and continue the service?
It's a whole different being. We changed
But the emphasis is on biyodo. The biyodo has nothing to do with it being or not being. As long as it's within his ability to do something, therefore, that seems to be dichoy doesn't enter into the picture. That's Tosas' question. Tosas answers that it's not so simple. Doing tshuva is not so simple. That's not considered biyodo. Because it's not simple. That's why it's dichoy. It's like the mizbeach is broken. It's chipped. That's what it is.
So remember, she's a big issue. You can't just go...
What?
You can't go heresy, not heresy very easily.
No. It's not easy. No, of course not. So if you hold Balicham Nidochim, the case of the heretic, the carbon's possible. He has to consecrate a new chatos to atone for that original sin. No, because that's a circumstance. That's not. There's nothing inherent in the halacha. It's just a question of time. Time is never. What about it? There's a backlog of karbonos, right? And you're not able to. It's not dichud. Of course, not dichud. It's only within the context of halacha you're not able to do something. Okay. If you had Balicham Didochim, you'd have to make such an announcement. If you had Balicham Didochim, not. We rule Balicham Didochim. Living it is. Okay. Further, Mesu. What happens if the Kohen, the Levi, and the Oni, the poor man, they pass away? Now, the Yorshim, the heirs, as I said yesterday, we'll see Rashi, they don't take on the debt of the father. And first of all, this agreement was between the father and what? And he was the debtor. The children, not the debtors. So they have a right in their own right to receive children, not because of their father, because they're Kohanim, they're Levim. So do you have a right now to say, well, I'll take from your portion to pay your father's debt? You have no right, because they're not the debtors. So Mesu Tzorach Li Terushus Minei Yorshim. Then you have to ask the Yorshim, are you agreeable to pay the debt of your father? And if they are agreeable to take over the debt, then the Truma that he will take in the future will cover the debt, even though the original agreement was between the lender and the father, not the children.
They're not obliged.
No. No, we're talking about an undocumented loan. It's a milval peh. Otherwise, there's a lien. There's a lien. Well, let's say there's no property left. The man died penniless. Man died penniless. He had nothing. So who owed the money? The father owed the money. The debt doesn't transfer to the children. They're not obligated to pay the debt of the father. They make it easier. Yesterday they felt it was unfair. Their assets. Let's say the man dies penniless, the debtor, and now he has children. Do the children have the means to pay the debt? Are they obligated? They're not obligated. The father left nothing. There's nothing left. He left nothing to them. Whatever they have is theirs. I mean, there's a mitzvah kibbut of aim, kibbut, honoring parent. You pay off the debt. Right? The Gemara says that if the father had stolen something, and the object is no longer here, the children have kibbut of aim. They should, because there it's a question of the father died in disgrace, right? So the Gemara asks, but there's no mitzvah to honor a parent. He's a Russia. So the Gemara says also tshuva. He did tshuva before he died, and he didn't have a chance to compensate the victim who he had victimized, who had stolen from. So the Gemara says that's kibbut of aim. There's a mitzvah for the children to compensate, pay restitution to the victim. But a debt, I mean, we're not talking about he's a Russia. He did something which is disgraceful. The man died penniless. He wasn't able to pay the debt. Is it a nice thing? It's a nice thing, but obligation? Even there's no obligation. There's no financial obligation.
Particularly, what happens is a person dies, and his assets, everything he owns, goes into what's called
probate.
An estate.
Estate, yeah.
An estate. But the liabilities go with it.
Okay.
So the debts and the liabilities...
Well, let's say the man leaves no estate. He was penniless.
No, I'm not talking about
Yeah.
that case. I'm saying...
I know, I understand. It's secular.
So now, before the estate can be released to the heirs, everything
Has to be satisfied.
Have to be satisfied.
Correct.
So in secular, this case, whether the loan was documented or undocumented...
Right, I understand that.
It would still be a...
Gemara says, metatl yaspi lo mishtabdi. Metatl and movables of the Yisomim are not linked to the debt of the father. Okay?
So here, if the father owned money, it's the estate.
Right.
before the
Here it's
transfer.
clear. The agreement was that he's going to collect from the truma. It means the man has nothing. He's going to collect from the truma, from the meiser. So the children, even though they're not obligated, if they choose to be agreeable that they'll cover the debt, he could take from their truma and their meiser. Although the agreement, you just have to give to another Kohen. Right? Take a look in Rashi over here.
This is the difference between Jewish law and secular law is that upon a person's death, everything transfers.
No, I understand.
instantly.
Of course.
It's not there's an intermediate step.
By Jewish law, everything transfers instantly
That's
too.
what I'm saying. Everything goes instantaneously
Right? To the heirs.
to the heirs,
Right?
but not the liabilities
Unless they're liened.
unless they're legal.
Correct.
But
So
that's
that-
because
Because when it goes, there's still an attachment to whoever that person may be.
The debt is attached to the asset.
Correct. I just want to do Rashi here. Leos Mafrishali Michelkon Hamalva Hazek Sheyafrish Trumos of the original agreement between the father and the lender, that when ultimately the lender will take the truma, Yimkor HaTruma, V'yakiv Adom Latzmo, B'Pura Nachov Zer, B'Shvil HaKohen, he will sell the truma and he will take the value, and that will pay off the debt. Chen Hamaser Rishon B'Shul Levi, Maser Oni B'Shul Oni, Hamaser Yakev V'Yochal. Meiser has no kedusha, So the meiser he's able to retain. He could actually eat the meiser. El shem mafresh is important. Maser min maser. When Levi receives maser, he has to take 10% and give it to the Kohen. That's called Trumas Meiser. Look at Shein Mutar Lazorim. Became on Shein Kan Gezel Matonos. Shran Nosen Demayim. Lekohen Zeh. This original agreement between the lender and the borrower was at the time of the loan. Meaning, if at the time of the loan he lent him the money and the man is impoverished, the lender cannot say to the Kohen, well, I'll take your truma and I'll take it as payment of the debt. Can't do that. It's only initially there was an agreement between the lender that the borrower had said that the truma in the future that you will take, or the meiser, that will you could take in payment of the debt. You could take my portion to pay off the debt at the time of the loan. Okay, now what happens if the father dies? Then he has to ask permission from the heirs. Because the obligation is not upon them to pay off the debt of the father. As we said, Yito mem rishus im rotzim shiskabel chovo bishvilom. Are they agreeable to accept the debt, the father's debt? Yaakve meisos atzmo. So then he has a right. He has a right. I mean, so what? No, he's not makna. He's not makna. He's not. There's no transfer. You know the makdav shel balol. If you have an asset, and I want to transfer it, we're talking about transfer. He would a right to take. That should be ultimately the truma. Right to pay a debt. That's what we're talking about.
So, Rabbi, I just want to ask back on truma and kohen and its arrangement with the lender. We say, and we've learned this before, that truma doesn't necessarily belong to this particular kohen. It belongs to the sheikh.
Correct.
And if somebody else, another kohen, was to preempt and tie this man...
No, seize it.
Seize it. But he would take it, tithe it himself.
He does not. No, you can't tithe it. The only person who can tithe is only the one who owns the grain.
Somebody else could tithe.
Only if he's appointed as a shliach.
But we said that somebody...
Only we learn shlichus from tithing truma. That's one of the sources.
Another kohen wants to preempt.
Let's say Ruvain the Yisrael tithes his grain, his crop.
He's already tithed.
And he hasn't yet given it away to any Kohen. And there's no designated Kohen. And a Kohen now comes and seizes that truma.
He's not a thief.
He's not a thief.
He's not a thief.
He's not a thief.
Now,
He did the wrong thing because it should have been given to him. But
What point is the transfer made to the Kohen?
no,
Back.
immediate. No, wait, which Kohen? Our case or normally?
No.
We can see. If it's Makiri Kohen, it's instantaneous. The Gemara asked the question. I mean, how does he collect it? That truma is not his. Right? If he gave it, so one answer is he gave it to a third party to take it on behalf of that Kohen. And then afterwards, that person had given it back to him. So what he's taking back is that Kohen's asset, the truma, of course the transfer already took place.
my question on this is, the Mishnah basically says that the lender and the kohen can make this deal.
Correct.
So that he can take it from his tithe. But the fact that the entire tribe owns it, doesn't that interfere with they have the right to it? Like if we said they own it, the entire...
But I'm asking you a question. They all own it, but I, as the owner of the truma, of the tither, do I have a right to choose which Kohen I want to give it to?
Yes.
I have that right. No Kohen could protest it. I have a right to choose which Kohen. So we have an agreement that you are the Kohen that I normally give truma to. Therefore, I'm taking your portion. You're the one who normally would receive it, which I have a right to choose you. And now you agree that when it's time to pay the debt, where I have the means, which is the truma, I will take that in place of payment.
So there has to be some mechanism
Of transfer.
so
That the Gemara asks-
before he gets it back.
That's the Gemara's question. That's the Gemara's question. I mean, how did the transfer ever take place? The Yisrael, when he tithes it, the asset was never the Kohen's. So when he takes it, he's taking the tribe's truma. He's not taking this particular Kohen's truma. The Gemara asked that question.
So we're going to see it.
That's the question, yeah. are you agreeable to take over the debt of your father? And they say yes.
This is after the loan, for the process. If they say yes,
So the same thing happens.
okay, now I'm giving it to you, don't take it.
Correct?
He has to give
Now,
it
no, he doesn't give it to them. No, he doesn't give it to them. Does not give it to them. Same thing.
There's got to be a opinion.
So good, so that's the same question. So how does it become the children?
That assumes the children were arming. But if they're not,
You're right. You're right, 100%. So that case would be the case of the Kohen and the Levi, not the case of the Arden.
So what would happen, Rabbi, if this lender and the Kohen made this deal? The lender tithed, and a third Kohen came and stole the truma.
According to Gemara's answer,
And what would now
wait.
be the
The
relationship?
Gemara says if it's Makir Kuna, that he has his designated Kohen who he always gives the truma to. So even before that Kohen takes possession of that truma, it becomes his. It's as if he's the solitary Kohen in the world. Because every other Kohen had actually removed himself from that truma.
We've always said the matter that the Kohen who stole doesn't have to return.
No, that's only if there's no designated Kohen. That's only if there's no designated Kohen. But if this family has a designated Kohen,
Then he's a thief.
he's a thief. It's
He
as
has
if
to
the
return.
Kohen already took possession and somebody steals it. He has to fully compensate the Kohen.
So there's a return.
Right, definitely.
The only circumstance under which there's no
It's
return
pre-giving, or there's no designated Kohen, so therefore belongs to the Shevet. Let's say a person would destroy his tevel. The Israel before, does the Kohen have a claim against him? You destroyed my truma. The truma didn't exist. It's all only in potential. I mean, he did the wrong thing to Israel when he destroyed the tevel, but there's no monetary claim against him. But if it's makiri kuna and he destroyed the Israel himself, he destroys that truma, that Kohen has a claim against him. He's a damager. He damaged his asset. Okay, I think we have 1 minute. Let's go a little further in the Mishnah. Meisu tzorch, okay. Tzorch lito rishus min yoshim. In hilvan b'fnei bezdin. Let's say this agreement between the borrower and lender took place in the presence of the bezdin. And it's tzorch lito rishus min yoshim. Then you don't have to ask any permission from the yoshim. You're able to collect the truma to cover the debt of their father. Because since the children have that right, you take their truma, you take their meiser to cover the debt. Now it's interesting. The Gemara says that in Sanhedrin, we just had last week, we learned when you have witnesses, we speak about Trish Chakira. Witnesses are only are considered evidence if they're interrogated. If Eidim are not interrogated, what's the halacha? Their word means nothing. They have to be interrogated to verify whether they're credible witnesses. Now, the Gemara says that by dinim ominous, by monetary cases, witnesses, they just testify without interrogation, the lender collects. Even though on a Torah level they should be interrogated, but nevertheless, Chazal, they suspended that protocol of interrogation. Why shall tinel dels b'fnei lovim? Because the likelihood of being able to survive an interrogation, that there shouldn't be any degree of discrepancy between the two witnesses, it's very remote. Therefore, they suspended the law of what? Of interrogation. So tinel does play lovin, because otherwise the person is not going to lend money. Because any time the person claims he doesn't owe the money, he has to bring evidence, and the likelihood of him collecting is going to be remote. So not to discourage lenders from lending, we suspend that aspect of the verification of the witnesses. Okay? Over here, we want Kohanim. Kohanim have no share in the land. Levim have no share in the land. The poor man has nothing. We want to encourage people to lend money. If they're not able to, he should die. So the lender says, you know, I'm stuck with this, I have a loss. And the kids are not interested. It doesn't make a difference. If it's done, the Bezdin authorize. It's like they're taking responsibility. Therefore, regardless of the children, the lender has a right to collect from the Truma and the Meiser in the future.